So, hi everyone, welcome back to The Power of Swapping Season 2. So, today I'm very excited because this guest holds the record of being the youngest swapper and part of the team at some point. So, I'm excited to have conversation with Amber.
Hi everyone.
Thanks for joining us today. Before anything else, I would, of course, introduce you to everyone. Amber, whose journey with TFP began at 14 as a volunteer during her school holidays. A lifelong enthusiast, she has been dedicated swapper since early days at Liang Court. So this is like 7 years ago. Inspired by her experience with TFP, Amber co founded her school first ever Green Council. Amazing. A pioneering student body that champions sustainable practices. Her efforts, along with her team, were recognized with the prestigious Green Flag, the highest tier of the WWF Eco-School Awards. Amber credits TFP for kickstarting her personal revolution in sustainability and for guiding her through the continuous evolution of her style, which we'll be talking more about that later on, and perspective on fashion. She is a testament of the power of passion and dedication in creating positive change. I love that.
Thank you, Ray. I'm so excited and so honored to be here today. And that was a lovely introduction. I sound so
Wow. You're welcome. Okay, so my first question is tell us more of what you're wearing today and the thought process behind it.
okay. So I am going abroad to study really soon. And actually, what I wanted to put on today is something that is both part of my efforts to be like introduce more color into my wardrobe because color is so fun. I feel like back then I used to be very like black, white, gray because they were good neutral colors. But now I'm getting back into the momentum of like finding my own best colors that bring out like the pop of energy that you need in your life. And also, since I'm going about to study, I recently just swapped out this top, which I find has a very kind of like oriental cut and pattern and color scheme. So it's just something which meant a lot to me because I'm going to bring it abroad and continue telling the story of my background and my roots even when I'm so far away from home. Yeah, and the skirt is just something which I have not had the opportunity to wear, and I'm always finding that opportunity to wear it, but it has just never come up. So like today is the day. And my shoes are from my mom, who I stole out of her closet without her consent. That's why it's a little bit big, but it's okay. It goes with the fit.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. So, I mean, it's only been like 4 years
4 years since I started.
since you got started. I remember those days where you're more of like tees and sport, yeah, exercise shorts. And now it's really a joy to witness how your fashion style is evolving and, making your own choices of what you would want to wear.
Yeah.
Can you take us that process of like from you being only a tee and a sports exercise shorts kind of girl and now finding different colors and different patterns and how does that feel?
Yes. I have definitely changed a lot since my TFP baby days.
I'm Amber, and I recently started volunteering at the Fashion Pulpit during my
I
holiday.
definitely remember so vividly. There are still some days where I go back to it because it's so practical, like exercise graphic tee, exercise shorts. You can't go wrong. You can do anything in that outfit. But yeah, I think definitely after volunteering at the TFP, even like the first few days, I was so like inspired by everybody who I met like in the team when I was working there because I think everybody's personal style spoke so loudly to how each of them are as a person. Like I loved that. You know, once you walk in, it's not like everybody's kind of like just following trends or like going along with what's most popular at that time. Everybody is honestly just experimenting. Everybody is kind of like finding their own way as well, you know, in how they dress and how they express themselves. So I think it gave me the confidence and the like freedom of choice to just be able to decide for myself, like what I wanted, you know? So I have TFP. Yes, definitely to thank for that. And my thought process going into like discovering my own style definitely took some time. It wasn't immediately. I have to say that while I did evolve from the exercise shorts and graphic tees, my first stage immediately after that one was definitely kind of more like using swapping as a means to find trendy items that I saw in the shop fronts, but I just wanted to shop them secondhand because I knew that was better for the environment. So it wasn't exactly yet finding my own style. I think it was still actually very much like following trends and seeing what was popular. But yeah, after that stage, then I realized that the fashion that I was wearing wasn't really speaking to me. Like I kind of just looked like somebody off the racks, or like, you know, you would buy one item and then 5 minutes later down the street, you would see someone else wearing it because it's just sold in such like mass quantities. And you're like, oh, okay, well, you know what? That's not surprising. Definitely, I've had like at least a few personal experiences like that. And yeah, after I think a good few months of that, slowly it started changing. I went through a lot of experimental phases, as I think everybody who cares about fashion would know. You kind of go through those awkward phases where you're transitioning. I went through like a very deep boho phase. Like I would look like a grandma's couch at certain points in time. But you know what? You have to go through that. You have to go through that. And then yeah, I went through a lot of streetwear as well. And I think where I am now is kind of like, I guess, a combination of all that, because on different days, you know, you have different aesthetics and you've just learned to accept that all of them are you. Like you don't necessarily, at least for me, I don't like bind myself now to a certain like style that I want to portray. It's everything and anything that I can feel like putting on myself that day. But it has to speak to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love the process. So, what I'm also excited about this conversation, because you're one of the guests where did not transition from the mainstream shopping, or correct me if I'm wrong, and then came to swapping. I felt like, at 14, you already started the idea of like swapping and wearing secondhand. How does that feel, like, having peers, of like having conversation of like, oh, I got this from X brands and all that sorts. um you growing up already of knowing, like, there's a way, or there's like swapping a way to dispose and acquire clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I've definitely had this conversation multiple times with my peers. Like, okay, I think from a young age, first of all, I think I started with getting hand-me-downs from my sister, because obviously that makes the most sense
Yeah.
in a family of two siblings. And then from there, I did, I would say I did dabble in fast fashion as well, because whenever we went abroad, especially to countries where like clothes would be cheaper, you know, it's kind of a natural tendency to also just shop from there as well. So I would say I do have experience in fast fashion as well. And then I got introduced to swapping, um, all thanks to my mom,
Yes.
who is honestly my biggest inspiration for like advocating for sustainability and all that. She introduced me to the TFP when you guys were still at Liang Court. And I remember I was still so small that I could only swap out accessories because the clothes would be all too big. Like I couldn't find anything that fit me. And yeah, so whenever I get asked by peers like, oh, where'd you get that? If you're a good friend of mine, you will know for sure that the default answer is, I swapped it from the TFP, or like I thrifted it, or like it's a hand-me-down, you know. And like I think it is very different from the default answer of like, oh, I got it from H&M, or I got it from Cotton On, that kind of, you know, well-known brands. I feel proud when I give that kind of answer. It's very empowering, knowing that your piece is so unique that it can't just be found off the racks. Like you can't go to H&M the next day and be like, ah, okay, that's the piece that Amber wore. You can't do that. And I think that's how fashion should be. Like, it should be unique to everyone, at least in some little way, you know? And so over the years, as I've had more and more conversations with my peers about like, and as they got to know me better about how, like, I feel like my fashion choices have become a testament to how you really can find everything that you need already. It's just about the means that how far you're willing to go, or I guess not settling, but knowing that you don't necessarily need an exact replica of whatever you see online. You can make it special to you, whether that's by upcycling or whether that's by finding something similar, but it has your own unique little twist to it, And yeah, I think our conversations have evolved to a point where I know at least my closest friends have become more influenced to shop secondhand, and I'm really happy about that. I think everybody should know that, and if everybody has a friend who's like that, it's really great.
Yeah. Cool. You've mentioned a while ago that you are in a experimenting era. And I know that you're pretty much aware of what's happening in the fashion industry, and that's the effort that you've also done in your previous school, right? So, what do you think are the biggest challenges that you've faced, or like your peers have faced, of you trying to have that kind of experimenting and self-expression through fashion, and also balance the idea of consuming mindfully? So how are you balancing, or how do you deal with the idea that experimenting requires a lot of trial and errors, which means you would acquire more stuff, and then knowing what you know now, with what fashion industry, with the production, the pollution and everything, how do you balance the desire of experimenting more and being mindful consumer? I'm curious about with the age,
Which consumer?
with
Oh,
Gen
mine?
Z, yeah. Because I mean, like, not just like your Gen Z, but I think it's natural for,
Especially at this age to experiment.
yeah, like I think it's so natural. It's different phases for everyone's life.
Yes.
Like at some point, we would have an experimental stage.
Mm.
So I think before it was, I would say, not easier, but it was more accepted ish, because the whole negative impacts of fashion was not talked about, or it was not exposed yet. So people would not have a conflict of values, yeah, because it was just experimenting. But
Yeah.
now it has changed, because experimenting means you would have to buy more to experiment different styles, but also because of that consumption, you're adding to that negative impacts, right?
Yeah.
So it's not your fault that this two world exists now,
Yeah.
but how do your peers or your generation balance this off, or like how do you deal with this kind of, I would say, contradictory?
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, I see where you're coming from now. I think, like, in addition to the fact that I guess back then there wasn't so much of a stigma around fast fashion because it hadn't gotten to such a bad point yet. That's one thing. And the other thing is that I would say that at least where me and my peers are right now, it's such a pivotal point of experimentation. Like, it's very natural, especially at this age, for everybody to go through this phase of experimentation. So I can see why those two needs would kind of like have to have it out with one another, and it's difficult to balance. I never thought of it that way. mm, I think it does lead to something which I saw you mention, like on one of the posts a few days ago, about like balancing self-expression and um, experimenting and consumerism. Because self-expression and experimenting does require, to a certain extent, consuming. The self-expression and the ways which you consume go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Like, they kind of help one another and they represent one another, because if I wanted to wear my values, which is my way of self-expression, I wouldn't want to do it in a way which necessarily is bad for my consumption habits. I would want to have thoughtful consumption habits while expressing what I want. And that is how I express my values, you know? So that's why they go hand in hand. I don't think it necessarily needs to contradict one another. Experimenting can still be mindful experimentation. You don't necessarily need to go for everything which you think you might maybe somewhat like on the recs. I've definitely been through that stage in my life because I remember when I first started swapping out things that actually fit me. You know, anything that kind of like looked or resembled what I wanted, even just a little bit, I'd be like, I'm going for that. I have the freedom to swap it back also,
Yeah.
you know. So I'd be like, try everything, you know. But after a while, the very interesting thing is that as you experiment more, or rather as you consume more, number one, you know what suits you. So it's no longer as like mindless, I guess, as before. You get more and more curated in your searches, which is good for your consumerism. Okay? And number two, you also become more mindful with what you want because you just know exactly which part of you you're speaking to at that point in time. It's like, I know I want this. I know that this is what I want and not what, like, I guess the trends or like social media is kind of like pushing me to do. Yeah. Another thing which I wanted to add on previously is that one of the pressures of like, I feel like modern day Gen Z is definitely social media.
Yeah.
Because social media is pushing us, I feel, at least I know me and my friends, especially like when we were just getting onto social media, I guess like when we were younger, you know, trends, micro trends, especially ones that kind of like come and go so fast, you know, they are everywhere. And it is really pressurizing to kind of like see that online every day. Whenever you click onto any social media app, you're like, this is how you're meant to dress. This is what looks good nowadays. If you don't do that, you know, the unspoken rule is like, you're not fitting in, or like you're not keeping up with the trends, like, you know. And
So how do you deal with that?
I think it's definitely like something which you have to come to realize yourself, that for the lack of a better way to phrase it, is like a lot of these money making corporations do this because it is a way to get more like traction for their brand. It's a way to get more customers, you know. But it's not necessarily what you're supposed to follow. That is exactly the opposite of what fashion and personal style is meant to be. You're not supposed to follow a mold. You're not supposed to follow some status quo. You're meant to find your own feet in this, you know. So I think it takes conversations, it takes courage and confidence and stepping out of your comfort zone to know that like, okay, no, I'm not going to do this for anyone else. I'm going to dress for myself, and I'm going to find things and consume in a way that is me, you know, that is what I want, that aligns with my needs and my values, and not yours.
Right. How does that make you feel though, that in your generation that now you have to think so many different things for you just to express yourself? Like again, going back to the point of like the previous era of like experimenting, doesn't need to think so many things of like, I want this, sure, I'll get this. There's no implications to that at that point that is not seen yet. But now your generation of be like, if I'm gonna support this or get this, I have to think of like, is it part of my values, or is it, doing good to the environment? Like, how does make you feel that you have to consider so many things just to decide in getting something?
That is a really good question. I love that because it's something which I think about so often. Like the fact that everything is so, especially with, I think a lot of things kind of like coming to the surface now with both social media and both like the speed of, I guess, like how we publicize things nowadays. We get to know so much more about what's going on around the world. And it has become so confusing to kind of like know what you're even standing for at this point in time, because every single thing that you interact with stands for something else.
Yes.
And that thing that it stands for another thing. Everything is just intertwined. It's very confusing. I completely understand that. And I'm very much still on my own journey of like figuring this out. I think everybody is. At the end of the day, I mean, I think what I return to, at least, or how I think about it at base level is, sustainability, which is what I want to advocate for sure. Is never going to be about mass production. It's never going to stem from mass production. It's never going to stem from unethical labor practices. It's never going to stem from being so profit driven. And I can see now that obviously sustainability does instead stem from slowness, mindfulness, intention. So I think those are the values which I keep in mind. And I guess in the whole mess of things, when you think about it, like, oh, how do I support this but not support that, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you just gotta take a step back and be like, okay, there's no rush to immediately like make it known like how, in what way you stand for something. Sometimes it takes a little bit more thought to know how you want to do so. And that's sustainability as well. Being intentional, being mindful about how you put your values out there.
I love that. Well done. So now that you've been swapping for 4 years, what has been some of your memorable moments, be it in the shop or outside, or the things that you got?
Wow. Okay. A lot of mini moments, I would say, over the years. Like I used to, now I can see that I guess the conversations with my peers are changing because it's no longer about like, let's go shopping down Orchard Road or like things like that, which were really fun back then. But now it's like, let's go thrifting, which is so much more me. And like, it stands for my values and I like that, and slowly we're all positively like influencing one another. How my friends, as they get to know me better, they know not to ask like where I got this specific piece from, but it's more of like, okay, I know you got this piece from the TFP, let's go next week, that kind of thing. So it's like small moments like that where I can really see that me and my friends like relationships with fashion have changed over the years, and that touches me a lot, and every day that I come to a shop, honestly, every day that I come to TFP, I see so many like diverse groups of people that come here. And it really touches and inspires me because, every day I think the community is growing and like we see so many new faces coming in from all sorts of different backgrounds. And that's one of the things which I love the most about the TFP, and that's one of the more memorable parts of my journey here. The fact that the community just keeps growing and I'm always reminded of it.
Having so many options that you could have go for in terms of like acquiring fashion, why did you stick to fashion? I mean, to swapping, and what it is for you to be, being part of the community?
Mm. Okay. I started off with swapping, that's for sure. I think over the years I have experimented with other like secondhand platforms like Carousel, which is the classic, and then other thrift stores like Refash, or um what was it, Haji Lane.
Yeah,
But it's very pricey. Yeah, so all the other different like thrift stores which are popping up in Singapore, and I would say that yes, Gen Z is definitely one of the driving forces of it. I think our generation is becoming a lot more open to secondhand fashion, which I'm very happy to see. And why I stuck to swapping? Well, first of all, I mean, look at the diversity in the shop. Like, it's so big. I have, honestly, everything much that I need here. And also, I don't need, like, a new wardrobe change, like, every, week. So, it has worked very well for me. I think one of the things that you realize when you swap is that you really don't need like that much. You kind of, once you have your staples, your more like statement pieces kind of like swap out a few times every year. But other than that, it doesn't take much to like look yourself and look put together in a way that you want to. So yeah, I guess long story short, the reason why I've started to swapping is because it's just such a effective way to kind of like come in and, number one, experiment with like a bunch of different styles, which I see here, and also get my hands on like so many different pieces of clothing like every time I come in, yeah, it's diverse enough, the pool is big enough, like what more do I need?
Yeah.
Also the workshops here, yeah,
Yeah,
great.
in a couple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like our own little community here. It's self-contained. Like, you don't really.
So you've mentioned about your wardrobe. So if you are opening your wardrobe, what does and what kind of emotion that evokes when you open your wardrobe?
I like to see that it's always changing and how that kind of reflects the part of my personal journey which I'm on. Like I mentioned how just now, I used to go with a lot more like earthy, neutral tones, including like black, white, grays, some greens, but now as I see my wardrobe evolve into something that's more colorful, I'm happy to see that, I'm happy to see the different things which are calling out to me over the years and how like things which I may not necessarily have liked back then are now staples of my wardrobe. And it's just such an interesting, like, I would say, time with myself to explore how I've been changing over the years. And my wardrobe is like a reflection of that. Something which I wanted to add on your previous question about why I start to swamping. Okay, this one I reflected on yesterday and I loved my reflection on this last night. I think what I love most about swapping is the storytelling element of it. Like, I love to come in and know that every single piece that I have picked out meant something to someone, like just very recently or a while back, went through something momentous with that person. In fact, maybe even multiple owners. I like to see that sense of community building and community interaction because I think swapping really changes your experience of like getting new clothes from it changes the experience from consumerism to sharing. I would say sharing stories, sharing styles, sharing ideas, and sharing your values even, which is so beautiful to see because now each garment doesn't exist as just like a singular item that a singular owner had. Instead, we're all kind of like collectively telling the story of a garment from one owner to the next. And that's such like a beautiful idea to me, to know that like I am the narrator of like this one part of this garment's story, and then the next person would be the next narrator, so on and so forth. And yeah, it's,
Yeah, I love that point.
you know,
Yeah, because I think what I've seen throughout the years also with the fashion pulpit, it feels like the shop or the act of swapping is like a washing machine kind of thing where it kind of transcends beyond what the fashion piece stands for in terms of what the brand has told you what it stands for.
mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the shop, it becomes your perspective of what it will be
Yes.
and continue the story. So it ge- takes away the idea of this piece is only for working professionals.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the shop, it becomes then like it is a piece that someone wore it, but it's no longer about the socioeconomic status of that specific piece, but it's how what you made out of it. So that's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, the point that you share
Absolutely.
is really good point because that's something that I've always been seeing more and more of like, yeah.
Exactly. And I'm sure it's great. It's very like heartening to see because like especially when you come in for work every day, you see maybe you've even seen quite a few pieces who quite literally went from one owner to the next.
Yeah.
And that's really nice to see because you can see how each person kind of writes their own story with that piece, right?
And that's to the point that why it becomes like whenever it enters, it doesn't have to be whatever it is from the social media that tells that this is, and because the different people have used it as different backgrounds, and it becomes like just a piece of clothes that we tell story or continue the story. That's why it's so amazing to just see that the power of swapping is actually relinquishing the old preconceived notion of what that item is or
Exactly.
that stands for.
Yeah. See, I love the freedom that you have when you walk into the store.
Yeah.
The freedom to write your own story with whatever you pick out. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
So
So
loving.
so now that you are kind of going outside Singapore into the world and would be experiencing a lot of things, what are you hopeful in terms of like your fashion journey?
Ooh, never thought about that. Okay, but great.
It's like literally she will be flying in 2 3 days. This was so spontaneous. I'm glad that we were able to catch her before she fly off.
I'm glad you guys did too. Yeah, okay. How my hopes and dreams for my fashion journey ahead. Well, I hope to continue advocating for secondhand fashion, that's for sure, because I will never stop saying that we already have more than enough of what we need. And I hope to start a movement, honestly, like wherever I go. And movements don't necessarily have to be in the conventional sense, where like I guess events running or like
Love that.
yeah, like it can be your own mini revolution, like just with friends, with family, with random strangers that kind of like ask, oh, that's so nice. Where'd you get it from? It's a great conversation starter and a great way to influence others like for the better. And my hopes and dreams is also that I continue to learn more about the different ways which I can contribute, how others around me can contribute to more sustainable practices, not just in fashion, but as a whole, like sustainability, which exists, for our common earth, for our people, you know? And yeah, so learning about sustainability and all of its different aspects and also the different ways that which I can contribute to each of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amber. That was so fun. I know this.
Sure. It did not feel like 40 minutes. It felt like 10.
Yeah, it did.
Oh
It
my
did feel like,
gosh.
but you're so good. Anyway, so for the people who have just seen you because of the podcast, and I know you'll be away because of school, but where can they connect with you if they want to after hearing your answers and they resonates with that and they wanted to have a further conversation?
Instagram. I don't really know any other platform. I think, yeah, Instagram. I guess that's the way of the world now. Instagram, Amber, AMBER ___ FOOCX.
We'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Amber.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to be here today.
That would be all. It's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.